I'm excited because I know what Ben's going to talk to us about, and I think it's going to be really helpful. I think the ultimate goal here is determining for your nonprofit leader or for a church leader, what is our best partnership? What are the things we really want to do as a church and we really want to do as a nonprofit? And if we find alignment with a church or a nonprofit in those things, then let's focus on partnering with them and not worry about trying to partner with everybody or sort of do partnership on a whim, but make it really intentional and understand who you are. So, Ben, will you come up here and chat with us? Can you guys welcome Ben Stewart?
Thank you, Ross, and thanks everybody for being here. This is really a great group of people to be part of. Many of you I know, a lot of you I'm getting to know more, and there's definitely faces that I don't recognize yet and would love to get to know. And Ross, I just want to call you out and say thank you so much. I hope I can say on behalf of all of us for doing this, and thank you. Thank you for the work that you and your nondescript organization are doing to not just rally together, but also catalyze relationships like this. So kudos to you, man. So just some quick context. Ross mentioned a couple things, a little bit about who I am, but really just some understanding about why I'm going to share some of the things I'm going to share just for the few minutes we have. So I'm newer to Evansville. I've been here just over 2 years now. And my sort of career background, if you will, has been 1 foot in the local church context and more recently 1 foot in the nonprofit sector. And I would have never expected that reality many years ago when I started off on this fun journey. But my background started, I grew up in the local church context. My dad was a pastor. We lived all over the nation, overseas. Most recently, we were in Colorado, and I started as a pastor at a local church in Wisconsin, near Green Bay, with a denomination of churches called the Christian Missionary Alliance. And in that context, served in different roles. I was youth pastor, missions pastor, local outreach pastor, did some church planting and lead pastor, and then most recently moved out to Colorado Springs, Colorado, and led one of their missions departments for the denomination, which was a very great challenge and learning experience. And it's also something that was used in my life to really fan the flame for global missions and open my eyes to just how exciting the nonprofit world is and the beauty of when partnership works well between nonprofits and local church. So now I am full on in the nonprofit sector with Uncharted. We came here about 2.5 years ago, and it's been a really fun ride since then. And I love that Ross wants to focus and highlight this question of what makes for a healthy partnership. And I want you to know that the things I'm sharing are things that I'm experiencing myself right now. They're things that sort of experimenting with, things that I would say that if I'm honest, there's some seasons I feel like I do really well with and Uncharted does really well with. And then there's seasons where I look back and I'm like, oh, we could really do better at this sort of stuff. So this is all very much a big learning curve for us and for me. So with Uncharted, a lot of our partnerships are with the local church, not exclusively, but primarily we have a lot of partnerships with local churches, most of those right here in this region, which is great, and then also starting to branch out into other parts of the U.S., places like Montana and California and Colorado and so on and so forth. So we're learning a lot about this. We are very much for the local church. We believe in the importance of the local church. Our family is part of a local church. And even though sometimes the local church can be the source of a lot of frustration, just honestly, my own personal theology doesn't let me give up on the local church. So for those of you who are here this afternoon representing the local church, thank you. Thank you for your perseverance. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for responding and being courageous in the way that God has called you to serve in the local church. All right, so I just have a few minutes to share. Ross wanted really practical, so I'm going to make some assumptions, and actually Ross talked about a couple things already at the beginning that were really good sort of baseline realities to know about healthy partnerships. And so I just have two, hopefully really practical points that, again, are sort of experiences that we're learning right now as an organization about what makes for a healthy partnership. The first is have frequent DTRs. Have frequent DTRs. Now, this actually resonates with something that we were talking about at our table, and I assumed that everybody knew what the acronym DTR was, but I've learned that's not the case. So if you don't know, it means define the relationship. Define the relationship. And typically, this is something that happens between two middle schoolers, and it's usually full of awkwardness and sweating and things like that. And I'll admit that as a former homeschooler, I had more DTRs than I cared to admit. But DTRs are significant. And the reason for having frequent DTRs, the point of the DTR is to say, okay, between our partnership, between our relationship, what are the expectations of why this partnership exists? What are the assumptions that you go in to this partnership having? What are the assumptions that I have? Are we on the same page about what we mean in this relationship to begin with? And typically we think that that's an important conversation to have at the beginning of the partnership, and we have that conversation and we just sort of continue to exist on the basis of that one conversation on an ongoing indefinite period of time. And my encouragement to us is to have frequent DTRs in partnership. And the reason for that, one of the main reasons, is because our landscape culturally has gone through a significant shift. Our landscape culturally has gone through a significant shift. We have shifted from being a culture that was complicated to now being a culture that is complex. And here's what I mean by this, and here's why it's important. You can use the analogy of something that's complicated. I want you to think of a huge math problem. The type of math problem that has more, letters and parentheses and things like that than it does actual numbers. And imagine this is a whiteboard, and you go up to this math problem, and it's just covering the whiteboard, and you stand there for a really long time trying to figure out what is the solution to this problem. It's complicated, it's overwhelming, but the truth is that it's static. And so no matter how long you stare at that problem, you can leave the problem, you can go pull people in and say, hey, can you help me solve this problem? Can we figure this out together? No matter how long you stand there, no matter how many people you pull in to solve the problem, the solution stays the same because it's a complicated, overwhelming problem, but it's a static problem. We no longer live in a complicated culture, we live in a complex culture. And the picture of a complex culture is think of the airport tower, right? The airport control tower. And you're an airport control person, and you look at your airport control screen and you see, okay, so you're at O'Hare, which is the worst airport in the world, in case you're wondering. You're at O'Hare. And you see, okay, there's 10 planes coming in from the west, and there's 3 planes coming in from the north, and there's a plane coming in from the east, and there's a weather system coming up from the south. And so you're staring at this computer screen, and you're coming up with the right solutions. What's the angle? What's the trajectory? What's the speed that all these planes have to come into the landing strip, and which strip are they going to? And you see the screen, and you got to figure it out. You've got your solutions. You plug it in, and then you turn around, and you talk to one of your colleagues for about 2 minutes, and then you look back at your screen, and everything has changed. That weather pattern that was in the south is now moving up at a faster rate, and some plane in the west is not doing something they're supposed to do. And so the point is the solutions that you had come up with just 2 minutes ago are now obsolete because it's complex. And this reality is something that has a lot of bearing in a lot of different sectors of leadership, of organization, of ministry, certainly. But it has a lot of bearing in how we do partnerships as well. And this is why it's important to have frequent DTRs, because we live in a complex culture where problems are shifting and changing constantly. And so solutions, sought after solutions that maybe worked 5 years ago, maybe even a year ago, are no longer as effective. And so maybe the reason that precipitated or catalyzed our reason to be in partnership together, maybe that reason no longer exists. Or maybe the way that we're partnering together isn't the most efficient, even though it was 6 months ago. And so you could be operating on assumptions and expectations that are no longer the most effective as they were even just 6 months prior. So my encouragement to us as nonprofit leaders and as leaders of the local church is, if you are in partnership with each other, what makes for a healthy partnership is to have frequent DTRs. Is this still working? Are we doing together, are we pursuing together the solutions that are still the most effective? And let's be honest and courageous and humble enough to admit when we're not. And what impact does that have on our partnership? Maybe we need to change our partnership. Maybe there's a shift. Maybe there's an evolution in how the partnership relates. Maybe we need to absolve this altogether. Maybe who we are as a nonprofit no longer addresses the need, and there's a different nonprofit that better addresses it. So it takes a lot of courage and humility to admit things like that. But it begins by acknowledging that our culture has shifted from a complicated culture to a complex culture. So why do we need to have frequent DTRs? Because the change in our landscape. How do we do that? As we ask honest questions. Ask honest questions. There's a lot of honest questions you could ask. Let me just briefly mention two. The first honest question that we need to be asking each other is, does our partnership honestly contribute value? Does it actually add value to your organization and to your vision? And I'll just be honest and say that if you don't care about how the partnership adds value to the other organization, then it's not really a partnership. The main reason why we enter into a partnership is, how can we add value to each other and to the mission that we are each trying to accomplish? So again, it takes a level of courage and honesty to ask each other, is this partnership adding value to you? And then to go hand in hand with that, this question of, does the value of this partnership outweigh the loss that you experience in partnering with me? And I think that's another thing that we need to acknowledge, that in partnership, you experience loss. Your organization experiences loss. To just be really frank, we partner with multiple local churches, again, both here and abroad, and they experience loss in that they financially support Uncharted. And I acknowledge that those are finances that they could be giving to many other wonderful things, maybe staff or new ministry initiatives or building improvements, that by giving it to us as a partner, they're experiencing loss in that way. It's important to acknowledge with the partner that you're in partnership with, the organization you're in partnership with, I acknowledge you're experiencing some sort of loss. Maybe it's loss of control, right? Sometimes that's more painful than the money. Maybe in the partnership, if it's truly a partnership, the organization I'm partnering with is doing things a little bit differently than I wished for, but because it's a partnership, I'm going to give up some control on that. So it's important to acknowledge that there's loss in your organization as a result of partnering with us. But then to ask, does the value outweigh that loss? Do you as a local church, in the case of Uncharted, do you as a local church experience the value of the different humanitarian work that we do across the world, and the different kingdom work that we do across the world, and how you guys are part of that, and how you can own that and claim that and shape that and influence it and be part of that? Is that value outweigh the loss that you experience as a result of this partnership? And so to again, be honest with yourselves and realize, what if there is a day where the loss outweighs the value? What if there is a day where the loss outweighs the value? Are you willing to acknowledge that? And if so, what do you need to do to adjust that? It may not mean that there needs to be a break in the partnership. It just may mean you need to adjust some things. But it could also mean that there needs to be a break in the partnership and that there's a more efficient and a more effective partnership either for the church or for the nonprofit. So have frequent DTRs and ask these honest questions. Does our partnership actually add value to your vision and to your organization? And if so, does that value outweigh the loss that you experience as a result of this partnership? So, as you move forward and you explore different partnerships, or as you're in current partnerships, maybe just do some self-evaluation. Maybe it's been a while. Maybe it's been a while since you've connected with some of the leadership of whatever organization or church that you partner with. Grab a coffee with them. Meet with their leadership at an executive meeting and ask some of these questions. Have a DTR with them and define the relationship and make sure that the expectations, the assumptions, the value that's happening between the two is actually what you assume it is currently. So there's point number one, or tip number one for healthy relationship. Have frequent DTRs. Second, and this is going to lead into an exercise that Ross, I think, will help guide us through. Know who you are. Know who you are and be confident about it. This is something that Uncharted has sort of stumbled into as we've developed and continue to develop partnerships with churches, is just being really upfront with who we are as an international mission organization. This is what you can expect from us. This is the focus that we have, which means this is the focus that we don't have. And so if you're looking for X, Y, and Z, but we're saying we're A, B, and C, man, we celebrate you that you want X, Y, and Z, but we're not going to be a great partner for that. And so know who you are and be confident in that. And likewise, let me just say this to church leaders. As you're thinking about local outreach, as you're thinking about global impact, as you're thinking about things that are important to you as a local church, figure out your philosophy of those things. Figure out what do we value when it comes to local impact and local partnership. Figure out what do we care about, what sort of ways do we want to engage globally. And so one of the things that we did, and this is just a real practical tool that we give to potential church partner leadership and current church partner leadership, is we just put together this grid. And this grid, a couple things about this grid is it's really meant to just help leadership of churches think through what is our philosophy of mission, what is our missiology. When we engage globally, what are the things that we care about, and what do we want it to look like? And so the point of this grid is not to lead a church to partner with Uncharted. The point of this grid is to help a church identify what they care about when it comes to global engagement. If then it makes sense for them to pursue a partnership with Uncharted, that's great. But if it doesn't, that's great too. At least now we know. At least now we know. And so there's different sort of categories that we walk leadership through, thinking about, do you want to be a church when it comes to global mission that is focused more on human aid or more on church planning? Do you want to be highly participatory and really engaging a lot of your people on short-term trips and sponsorships? Or do you want to be more just heavy on the financial support? Where do you want to fall on this? And another thing I'll say about this grid is it's not an either or. None of these things are an either or. It's more like where do we want to fall? What's the emphasis that we want to have? There's certain realities globally that we need to pay attention to, and how do those inform where we fall on this grid? So this helps church leaders that we want to partner with understand where they fall, and then it's a tool that allows us to say, man, you are totally in line with where we fall on this, and we think our vision can help you complete your vision. But it also allows us to say, man, your vision for what you want to do is fantastic. That's not us, though. So let me encourage you to connect with, another nonprofit, X, Y, and Z nonprofit that's doing this. So this is a tool that has helped us be really confident in who we are and to feel free from the burden or the pressure to have to try to partner with everybody. You can't partner with everybody. Otherwise, you're constantly changing who you are. So what we did is we put together sort of a first draft, locally based. Now, this is a first draft. This is a mock-up. This is not something that we're saying these are the right words, these are the best words, but this is more just like a catalyst or a prompt for you guys to think about as partners, as nonprofits, and as local churches. I want to give it over to Ross because actually what we've done is printed off what you're seeing on the screen right now, one for everybody. And we thought it might just be a good exercise to start thinking through some of this stuff. So as you think about local outreach and as you think about partnership here locally, what are things that are important to you? Some of this stuff is pretty straightforward and self-defining. When you partner, do you want to partner with an organization that focuses more on the relief side of things, meeting felt needs, or more on the long-term restoration, or a blend of both? Do you want to be able to participate at a high level, mobilizing a lot of people in your church? Or is it a partnership where you come alongside and financially support or support with other resources? Alignment talks about what Ross said earlier about centered set versus bounded set. This is really important for local churches to talk about before they engage in partnership, so that you don't wake up someday realizing you're in a partnership that actually you wish you weren't in. This is a really important conversation. It's not this is better and this is worse. It's just really being honest with who are we and what's important to us. Focus and scope. Do we want it to be more individual or community impact? Okay? So, Ross, unless you want to say anything else to set this up, I think the next place we're going to go with this is to give you a chance to just think about this and interact with it. And the hope is that you would take this home or take this back to your office and adapt it. Make it something that's useful for your church, for your organization. Replace the words, mark it up, and do what you want with it. But my hope was that just really simple couple practical points on what makes for a healthy partnership between local church and nonprofits. Have frequent DTRs. Have frequent DTRs. Don't assume you're always on the same page because of how fast things are changing. And know who you are and be confident in it. Okay? Thanks, guys.